Welcome back, listener. Ready to dive deep into the world of gold mining?
You bet.
You guys sent over a mountain of research on Kinross Gold Corporation articles, earnings calls, analyst reports.
Yeah, the whole shebang.
We're here to help you sift through it all.
Find those golden nuggets.
Exactly. Think of us as your personal prospectors.
Guiding you through the complexities of Kinross Gold.
Perfect. So,
Where do we even begin?
let's start with the big picture.
Yeah.
Where does Kinross fit into this massive gold mining landscape? Small-time operation, global powerhouse.
Kinross is definitely not small time.
Okay, good to know.
They're a major player, a Canadian company
Been around for a while.
since 1993. Trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange, ticker symbol K,
Okay, got it.
and their operations, global, from North and South America to Africa.
Wow, talk about a global footprint.
Yeah, we're talking about a company with a market cap of over $12 billion.
Okay, so not your average mom-and-pop gold mine?
Nope, not even close.
Now, we've got some intel on their Q3 2024 performance.
Yeah, their earnings.
Anything jump out at you when you were going through the materials?
Absolutely. Q3 was a record-breaking quarter for Kinross.
Really? In what way?
They pulled in a massive $415 million in free cash flow.
Wow.
That's a 20% jump from the previous quarter.
So they're really raking it in.
For the first 9 months of 2024, over $900 million in free cash flow.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What's fueling this success? Just luck, or are they doing something special?
It's definitely not just luck.
Okay, go.
Kinross is firing on all cylinders right now.
Oh.
First off, they're incredibly efficient.
I see.
Streamlined operations, keeping costs down.
That's huge, especially these days.
And they've been strategically paying down debt, putting them in a strong financial position.
Smart move. So they're efficient, financially savvy.
Yeah.
But what about the actual gold?
Oh, they're pulling impressive numbers out of the ground, too.
Like, how much are we talking?
In Q3 alone, 564,000 ounces of gold.
Wow. And at what cost?
Less than $1,000 per ounce.
That's impressive. Keeping those production costs low is key.
Especially when the price of gold can be so unpredictable.
Makes sense. So where is all this gold coming from? One massive mine, or are they spread out?
They've got a diverse portfolio of mines across different continents.
Each playing a role in their success.
Exactly. Their Tasiast mine in Mauritania is a standout,
Tasia,
consistently delivering high-margin production.
like their golden goose.
You could say that. Tasiast had another stellar quarter, even increased throughput. They're processing even more ore than before.
Tasiast, got it. Any other stars of the show?
Absolutely. Paracatu mine in Brazil,
Okay.
another heavy hitter, saw a production boost in Q3,
How come?
higher grades of ore being mined.
So richer veins of gold?
Exactly. And then there are their U.S. operations in Nevada and Alaska,
Right, like Fort Knox.
Fort Knox, Round Mountain.
Those saw increased production too.
Yep, partly due to a new project in Alaska called Mancho.
And show, another one to remember.
High-grade ore for Mancho is really making a difference.
Sounds like a game changer for their U.S. operations.
For sure.
But I'm curious about their La Coipa mine in Chile. It came up in our research, but not as glowing as the others.
Yeah, La Coipa's been a bit of a tough one.
Oh,
Seems like they've been trying to improve operations, but there have been some hiccups along the way.
I see.
The good news is they're still on track to meet their annual production targets.
So a bit of a wait-and-see situation.
Exactly.
So La Coipa, the underdog story.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
It's great that Kinross isn't just focused on their existing mines, right? They've got big plans for the future.
Oh yeah, they're not the type to rest on their laurels.
So what kind of exciting projects do they have in development?
They've got some seriously exciting projects in development that could really amp up their production and profitability in the coming years.
Okay, spill the beans. What are these potential game changers?
Let's start with Round Mountain Phase X in Nevada.
Okay, Round Mountain.
They're drilling like crazy there, and the results are incredibly promising.
Like, what are they finding?
High-grade ore, wide veins,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that gets a mining company excited.
And what does that mean for Round Mountain?
It points to a very profitable future for Round Mountain.
Sounds promising. What else?
Then there's the Great Bear project in Canada.
Great Bear. Okay.
This one is shaping up to be massive.
Like, how massive are we talking?
A recent preliminary economic assessment showed it has the potential for large-scale, low-cost production.
So potentially one of their crown jewels.
Potentially. And get this, they're finding even more gold deposits than they initially projected.
Wow. That's what I call striking gold.
Yeah.
Any other hidden treasures waiting to be unearthed?
One more to keep an eye on, Lobo Marte project in Chile.
Lobo Marte in Chile, got it. What makes this one special?
What's interesting about Lobo Marte is that it's strategically located near their existing La Coipa mine.
Oh, I see. So if La Coipa can turn things around...
Having another strong mine nearby could create a real powerhouse for Kinross in Chile.
So, 3 major projects. Round Mountain Phase X, Great Bear, and Lobo Marte. Kinross is definitely thinking big. But let's switch gears for a sec. Let's talk about their financial strategy.
Right.
We know they've been working hard to pay down debt. Where do things stand now?
They've made phenomenal progress on the debt front.
Like how much progress?
Remember that $1 billion term loan they were tackling?
Yeah.
They've repaid $650 million of it just this year.
Wow. So, on track to be debt-free soon.
They're on track to completely wipe out that debt in the new year.
Talk about financial discipline.
For sure.
But here's the interesting part. With the debt situation almost resolved, what's next for their capital allocation strategy?
The million-dollar question?
Right. Where will they put all that cash they're generating?
Well, from what we gathered in their earnings call transcript, it seems like the price of gold is going to be a major factor in their decision-making.
Of course, it all comes back to gold. So what are their options? What paths could they take?
Well, they could double down on those new projects. Round Mountain Phase X, Great Bear, Lobo Marte.
Okay, so investing in growth.
Pouring resources into those projects could lead to significant growth in the future.
Makes sense.
Or they could focus on expanding their existing mines, boosting production at their current stars, like TZS and Paracatu.
So making their good mines even better.
Right. Or they could decide to return value to shareholders through dividends or share buybacks.
Ah, yes, rewarding those who have invested in their success.
Exactly.
So are they leaning one way or another? Any hints?
They were a bit tight-lipped during the earnings call.
Playing it close to the vest.
But they did say they're carefully considering all factors.
Of course. It's a big decision.
We'll be watching the gold price closely. But they also want to make sure they're making the right investments for long-term growth.
So they're playing it smart, not rushing into any decisions.
Exactly.
It's a delicate balancing act, rewarding shareholders while investing in the future.
Definitely a lot to consider.
Okay, so we've established Kinross is a global company, diverse set of mines, performing well financially, and they have some incredibly exciting projects on the horizon.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Before we dive deeper into those projects, I think it's time to take a closer look at the financials. Let's break it down mine by mine to really see where their money's coming from.
Great idea. Let's get granular.
Yeah, let's see what's driving their success at the mine level.
Sometimes the details reveal the most interesting insights.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Time to dissect these financials.
Love it. Let's focus on their top-performing mines. Tasiast, Paracatu, and Fort Knox.
Right, those are the standouts when we talked about production.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to see how that translates into cold, hard cash.
Let's start with Tasiast.
Okay, so in 2023, Tasiast brought in a whopping $1.2 billion in revenue.
Wow.
That's roughly 28% of their total revenue, just from one mine.
That's incredible. It really is their golden goose.
And it gets even better. In the trailing 12 months leading up to Q3 2024, Tasiast's revenue jumped to $1.4 billion, now representing a solid 29% of their total.
So it's still going strong.
Definitely. Now let's move on to Paracatu in Brazil.
Okay, Paracatu. How did it perform?
In 2023, it generated $1.15 billion in revenue, about 27% of their total.
So neck and neck with Tasiast.
Pretty much. And it's holding strong.
Yeah.
In the trailing 12 months leading up to Q3 2024, its revenue increased slightly to $1.19 billion, still roughly 25% of their total revenue.
So Tasiast and Paracatu, the dynamic duo, each pulling in a quarter of Kinross's total revenue.
Exactly. Now let's shift our focus to Fort Knox in Alaska.
Right, the mine that got that boost from the Moncho project.
In 2023, it generated $558 million, about 13% of their total revenue.
Not bad, but I'm guessing that number jumped significantly in the trailing 12 months.
Hold on to your hat. In the trailing 12 months leading up to Q3 2024, Fort Knox's revenue has surged to $785 million.
Wow, that's a huge increase.
Now a solid 16% of their total.
A 40% jump in revenue. The Moncho project really was a game changer.
Absolutely. Integrating that high-grade ore was a brilliant move.
Okay, so we've got the revenue picture, but revenue is only half the story, right? What about profitability?
Exactly. Are they actually making money from all this gold? And the answer is a resounding yes.
That's what we like to hear.
Kinross is known for having strong margins.
Meaning?
They're keeping their costs under control and squeezing out those profits.
So they're not just digging up gold, they're digging up profit.
Precisely. Now remember, gross profit is essentially the money they make after deducting the direct costs of producing that gold.
Right, so it shows how efficient they are at getting that gold out of the ground.
And guess what? Tasiast shines once again. In 2023, it generated a staggering $550 million in gross profit, with Paracatu trailing closely behind at $424 million.
Those two are really in a league of their own.
Yeah, they are. La Coipa came in third for 2023, generating $152 million in gross profit, which is respectable.
But what about Fort Knox? With that massive revenue jump, I'm guessing their profit soared too.
That's where it gets interesting. Fort Knox, even with that huge revenue increase, only brought in $79 million in gross profit that year.
Wait, really? I'm confused. Their revenue skyrocketed, but their profit was relatively low?
It's a good illustration of why revenue doesn't always tell the whole story.
Okay, I'm listening.
Even though Fort Knox's revenue increased significantly, it seems their costs went up as well.
I see.
This could be due to the integration of Manh Choh or other operational expenses.
So it's not just about bringing in more money, it's about managing those costs.
Exactly. Higher revenue doesn't automatically mean higher profit.
What about the trailing 12 months leading into Q3 2024? Did Fort Knox's profit catch up?
Yes. In the trailing 12 months, Fort Knox stepped up its game. They generated $215 million in gross profit, a significant jump from the previous year.
So they figured it out, got those costs under control.
It seems so. Now, to be fair to their other mines, Bald Mountain and Round Mountain are also seeing some positive trends in profitability.
But we'll keep our focus on the stars for now.
Sounds good.
I want to pause for a second and clarify a couple of terms we've been using. I know our listener is savvy, but just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, good idea.
First, trailing 12 months. What does that actually mean?
Trailing 12 months just means the past 12 months of financial performance. It's a way to look at the most recent data and get a sense of the company's current trajectory.
Okay, so like a snapshot of their recent performance, not just a single point in time.
Exactly.
And how about gross profit? We've mentioned it a few times, but can you remind us what that is in simple terms?
Sure. Gross profit is simply the revenue a company generates minus the direct costs of producing their goods or services.
So for Kinross, it's the money they make from selling gold minus the cost of actually digging it out of the ground.
You got it.
So it's the profit before things like administrative costs, taxes.
It's the raw profit from their core operations.
Okay, now that we've got those terms clarified, let's zoom out a bit. We've been focused on Kinross's internal performance, but how do they stack up against their competition? Are they the top dog in the gold mining world?
That's a great question. The gold mining industry is full of companies of all sizes.
So where does Kinross fit in? Are they a guppy or a shark?
Kinross is considered a mid-tier gold producer.
Okay, mid-tier. So not the biggest, but not tiny either.
Right. They're not at the same level as giants like Barrick Gold or Newmont, but they're definitely not small.
So they have the resources to compete on a global scale.
Exactly. But they're also nimble enough to adapt to changing market conditions.
So it's not just about size, it's about strategy and execution.
Exactly.
But how do their financials actually compare to their peers? Are they punching above their weight?
Let's look at some key metrics.
Okay, shoot.
Operating margin, their profit as a percentage of revenue.
I'm familiar with that one.
Their operating margin was 19.35% for the trailing 12 months leading into Q3 2024. Is that good?
That's a solid figure. It shows they're controlling their costs effectively and generating healthy profits.
But how does that compare to the big guys?
To give you some context, Barrick Gold, one of the leaders, had an operating margin of 24.73% during that same period.
Okay, so Barrick's doing a bit better.
But Kinross is still in a respectable range.
So they're holding their own.
Definitely. Now, another important metric is earnings per share, or EPS.
Right, EPS. That tells us how much profit they're making for each share of stock.
Exactly. For the trailing 12 months leading into Q3 2024, Kinross's diluted EPS was $0.58.
How does that stack up against Barrick?
Barrick Gold's EPS for that same period was $1.88.
Okay, so Barrick is clearly pulling ahead in that department.
They are. But being a mid-tier player like Kinross has its advantages too.
Oh, like what?
Mid-tier producers often have a strong focus on specific regions or types of mining, which allows them to develop deep expertise.
So they can become specialists.
And they might be more willing to take risks, explore new technologies. So it's not just about size, it's about finding your niche and being innovative.
Exactly.
What's interesting to me is that Kinross seems to be striking a balance.
In what way?
They're mid-tier, but with a global reach, a diverse portfolio, and a solid financial track record.
They're a company to watch, for sure.
Let's circle back to those exciting projects we discussed earlier. Round Mountain Phase X, Great Bear, and Lobo Marte.
Right, those are the big ones.
Are those their only options for growth? Are they keeping any other secrets up their sleeves?
From what we gathered in their earnings call, it sounds like they have a few other irons in the fire.
Oh, really? Do tell.
They mentioned that their team is actively advancing study work on other opportunities.
Okay, so they're being a little mysterious.
And that they'll be providing more updates in 2025.
So we'll have to stay tuned.
Absolutely.
But any hints about what those other opportunities might be? Any clues we can decipher?
They did mention exploring opportunities at Bald Mountain to extend its mine life beyond 2025.
Okay, so they're not giving up on Bald Mountain just yet.
And they highlighted their Curlew Basin project in Nevada, which they believe has good margin potential.
More gold in Nevada. Always a good sign.
They're definitely bullish on Nevada. They also mentioned enhancing their exploration programs to support the future of their business.
So they're actively seeking out new opportunities.
They're always on the lookout for the next big discovery.
With all they have going on, their current mines, the 3 major projects, debt almost cleared. Why are they so focused on finding even more opportunities?
It's the nature of the mining industry.
How so?
Mines have a lifespan. Eventually the ore runs out.
So they need to constantly be searching for the next big thing.
That's like a perpetual treasure hunt.
I never thought of it that way. It makes sense, though.
They need to keep that pipeline full to ensure their long-term success.
They're running a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And that's another reason Kinross is so interesting.
Because they're playing the long game.
They're thinking generations ahead.
All right, before we move on, we have to address the elephant in the room, the gold price.
Ah, yes, the gold price. The wild card.
It's a major factor for Kinross and for the entire industry. What's the latest?
Well, in their Q3 2024 earnings call, Kinross acknowledged that the gold price can be volatile.
We all know that.
And that it will play a role in their future decisions.
Of course.
They're prepared if prices soar, and they're prepared if they dip.
So what's your take on the gold price? Any predictions?
Predicting the gold price is like predicting the weather, nearly impossible.
It's influenced by so many factors.
Global economics, interest rates, inflation, geopolitics, investor sentiment. It's a lot to keep track of.
So how should our listener interpret all this? How can Kinross plan ahead if the price of gold is so unpredictable?
Think of it this way. If the gold price stays strong, Kinross has a lot of flexibility.
They can invest in those new projects, expand their existing mines, and reward their shareholders.
Exactly. It's like having a tailwind.
But if the price drops, they'll need to be more cautious.
Tighten their belts, prioritize their most promising opportunities.
So it's a high-stakes game?
It is. But it's one that Kinross seems to be managing well.
They're using the gold price as a guide, not a dictator.
Well said.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've explored their operations, their financials, their projects, their competitive positioning.
We've left no stone unturned.
What's your overall assessment? What's the key takeaway for our listener?
Kinross is a company that's making smart moves, they're financially sound, and they're strategically positioning themselves for continued growth.
They're like a seasoned prospector, always searching for that next vein of gold.
Exactly. But before we wrap up, I think we should revisit that elephant in the room again, the gold price.
The gold price. Okay, what about it?
We know it's going to be a major factor in their decisions moving forward.
Right, but it's so unpredictable.
It is, but that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating. It's a challenge, for sure.
But Kinross seems up for the challenge.
They do. They're adaptable, they're strategic, and they're not afraid to take calculated risks.
All right, so listener, as we wrap up this deep dive into Kinross Gold Corporation, we leave you with this thought. While the gold price is a wild card, Kinross is a company that's well-positioned to navigate whatever comes their way.
They're a company worth watching.
Now, before we say goodbye, we want to leave you with one final question to ponder. We've explored their operations, their financials, their projects, their competitive landscape, their approach to sustainability, and their commitment to responsible mining. But we haven't talked about what you think they should do next. We know they're facing a big decision with their debt nearly paid off, how to allocate all that capital they're generating.
Exactly. The gold price is a big factor.
Huge. What do you think Kinross should prioritize in 2025? Go all in on those new mines.
Round Mountain Phase X, Great Bear, Lobo Marte.
Let her focus on expanding Tasiast and Paracatu.
Or play it safe and return some cash to shareholders, dividends, buybacks.
So many options.
It's a tough call. No easy answer.
But it makes it more interesting. Yeah.
Definitely. If the gold price stays high, they have a lot of flexibility. They could get aggressive and invest heavily in those new projects.
Supercharge their growth.
Exactly.
Those new projects are exciting.
Especially Great Bear, right?
Could be a real game changer.
No doubt. But they could also focus on their existing mines.
Make them even more efficient.
Squeeze more gold out of them.
Tasiast and Paracatu are already so profitable.
Can't forget about the shareholders, though.
Right. They deserve a return on their investment.
If Kinross goes for dividends or buybacks, it sends a strong signal.
Shows confidence in their future.
And a commitment to rewarding investors.
Growth versus returns, it's a classic dilemma.
Like choosing between a delicious meal today or investing in a farm that will feed you for years.
I like that analogy. It comes down to Kinross's assessment of the market.
Their long-term strategy.
Do they think the gold price will stay strong?
Or do they see a downturn coming?
Listener, what's your verdict? What's the best path for Kinross?
Weigh the options and make a judgment call.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hit us up on social media or send an email.
We love hearing from our listeners. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Kinross Gold Corporation.
Hope you found it informative.
And maybe even a little bit exciting.
We explored their operations, financials, projects, competitive landscape.
Their approach to sustainability, their commitment to responsible mining.
And don't forget that thought-provoking question about sustainability in the mining industry.
Such a complex issue.
We need to keep having these conversations.
We encourage you to keep learning, keep exploring.
Keep asking those tough questions.
And if you ever need a guide on your deep dive into knowledge,
you know where to find us.
Until next time, keep digging for those golden nuggets of wisdom.
The best investments are always in yourself and your own knowledge.
Happy learning.